on the program this evening when we now have the announcement from the U.S. that they've actually joined the Israeli military action and bombed 3 nuclear sites in Iran. Negar, what do you think the reaction is going to be from Iran? Are they now going to agree to end the war, stop the nuclear program, or do you think that they are going to retaliate and possibly send missiles on U.S. bases, for example?
I think they're likely to retaliate, although I'm just seeing in Iranian media, and you need to confirm this later, but Iranian media reporting that Iranian officials are saying that they had removed nuclear material from these sites beforehand. I don't know how accurate that is, but they could have potential consequences from the attack or not. We have to wait and see really the impact of what these attacks were, especially in Fordo, which is a facility deep underground. And experts had been saying that the Israelis alone don't have the material and capacity to destroy that facility, and only the U.S. does. But I just want to wait and see how this operation actually concluded and were these sites destroyed or not. And as far as the Iranian side, I think the Iranians have been saying and threatening for a while that if the U.S. does enter the war, they're going to retaliate on the U.S., and this is that moment. So I think the more likely scenario is that they are going to respond. Just as they saw with the Israeli attack, I think they don't see good options in front of them. If they don't respond, they're going to get even more attacked, at least by the Israelis, potentially the U.S. or not. And if they respond, it's going to just escalate the war potentially further. The similar episode we saw was back in 2020 when President Trump ordered the assassination of top Iranian General Soleimani. And back then, the Iranians retaliated by attacking the U.S. base in Iraq, Al-Assad, shooting a few hundred missiles from their soil into that U.S. base. And then it de-escalated and both sides took an off-ramp. So I'm hoping maybe that's also one scenario, that they would see this as one attack and then the Iranians would respond, but then the various sides can take an off-ramp. But right now, at this moment, I think what's in front of us is just more escalation. The U.S. has just entered this war. And the Iranians do see this as a declaration of war, an attack on their homeland, their sovereignty. And I think the scenario that's most likely is they're going to respond.
Now, I have to ask you about sort of the lead up to today's decision, or to today's announcement that the U.S. did in fact bomb Iran. We've had about 9 days of Israeli military action. Just on Saturday, the Israeli foreign minister told diplomats in a meeting in Istanbul that they were still open to negotiations, that they were still sort of keeping that door open, that there could be diplomatic discussions, but Israel had to stop attacking Iran. Why this escalation now from the U.S. side when Iran kept on saying during these days that they were in fact open to continue those discussions as long as the attacks from the Israelis stopped?
Mm-hmm. I don't understand the strategy here. It seems like some level of potentially diplomatic deception is also involved, or a lack of strategy, because the Iranians had nuclear talks scheduled with the U.S. on Sunday, last Sunday, and then came the Israeli attacks 2 nights before. And it's still not clear if the U.S. green-lighted or was aware of that attack. But if they were, it doesn't make sense to have talks scheduled and then have military attacks on the same nuclear program. And then President Trump just said that he's going to give it 2 more weeks, diplomacy or negotiations, to give it 2 more weeks to see if they can make peace. And just today, Secretary Rubio said that the U.S. preferred option is to resolve this diplomatically. And then comes the attack. So I think the way I'm looking at this is that their understanding of diplomacy, of negotiations, of talks, is just absolute surrender from the other side. I don't think they see it as going into talks, giving something and taking something. They don't want to make concessions. They just want the absolute surrender of the other side, as President Trump had also posted on Truth Social in the past few days, unconditional surrender. And so diplomacy didn't bring that unconditional surrender because the Iranians didn't agree to what the U.S. had demanded with the shifting of the goalposts throughout the negotiations, because initially was no nuclear weapons, which the Iranians said we're open to discuss. And then the goalpost shifted to saying no nuclear program, even civilian, or no enrichment with the nuclear program. So these, were also red lines for Iran, or non-starters or deal breakers. But I think what this also does is that this will diminish trust for the U.S., for the process of diplomacy and negotiations for potentially a long time to come. How can the Iranians now trust the United States and its partners to come back to the negotiating table if, when negotiations are announced or scheduled, they also get attacked militarily?
Just give us your sense or your analysis. What's happening right now in Tehran, in the minds of Khamenei, in the minds of Pezeshkian? What are they thinking? How are they discussing the next steps?
Well, I wish I was a fly on the wall over there. This is just going to be speculation and analysis. But I think from past precedent, what we can put together, of course, and from a distance, is that they don't see not responding as an option unless something extraordinary is offered and some magical mediation is happening. I don't think the next step is seen as a no answer, because I think they realize that that would be perceived as further weakness and will bring more and more severe attacks. As far as responding, how are they going to respond to the world's, mightiest and most strong army potentially in human history? There's no matching of the ability of the U.S. Army. But then at the same time, we have to remember the experiences of Iraq and Afghanistan. The U.S. Army, the same mighty army, went into those countries thinking that it's going to take a few weeks, and they got bogged down for 2 decades, for 20 years, trillion-dollar wars, lots of American blood and resources wasted in Afghanistan. They had to return the key back to the Taliban in 20 years and come out. So the underdog, maybe the underdog, but at the same time, this is their homeland, this is their land. They're going to fight tooth and nail for their homeland, for their land. And this is not just the government we're talking about. It's also going to be the people. The past week has created a sense of unity, a rally around the flag of the defense of the homeland. People seeing that their homes are being attacked, the homeland is being bombed, and wanting to respond to that. So I don't see any good coming out of this. But at the same time, I think in Tehran, they are just looking at bad options in front of them, and they have to choose one of them. And my prediction from past precedent, again, is that I think they're going to respond one way or the other.
So do you think this was a mistake from the U.S.? I mean, reading what Donald Trump says on Truth Social, he says Iran must now agree to end this war. It seems like he's implying that this was sort of a one-off strike, and now he's hoping that he's pushed Iran enough to come to the negotiating table and agree to end the war in whatever way that Donald Trump thinks is ending the war. But do you think that was this sort of a miscalculation on his part, that instead of actually getting the Iranians to discuss and to negotiate, they are in fact going to retaliate much more in a much more severe way?
I think this is going to be a mistake. Yes, absolutely, Sire. I'm just looking at breaking news now. Again, Iranian state TV saying that there was no material in these locations to create radiation. We'll see if that will be confirmed. But anyways, I think this was a really bad decision. Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is going to escalate a war. The president had promoted himself as the president of peace during the election campaign. He promised to end wars in the world, to bring peace to the Middle East. He expected the Nobel Peace Prize, and he just entered or started the next big war in the Middle East, potentially. He didn't bring peace to Russia and Ukraine as he had promised. He didn't bring peace to Gaza. And he couldn't negotiate a deal with the Iranians. The nuclear program is not a simple thing. The Obama administration delivered a nuclear deal, which wasn't perfect, but it was a nuclear deal after 2 years of intense negotiations. It's also the attention span of this administration. They only did it for 60 days and then they gave up. at least they gave up to pressure from the Israelis who had been wanting to attack. And finally, it looks like they outmaneuvered them. So, yeah, I think this is just going to open the door for more conflict, more war in a region that has been torn by lots of wars and conflict. It's going to bring more instability, more insecurity to the region. We saw what came out of Iraq and Afghanistan, the insecurity, the armed insurgency, and how it impacted not just those countries, but the entire regions around them, and also the U.S. Army personnel, the many lives lost, the trauma that the veterans carry, including the vice president himself. We've heard and seen all of that. So I don't understand how this decision was made by an administration that was trying to promote peace, or at least that was their election campaign. And it's only been a few months. What are we, June?
Yeah. Negar Mortazavi from